It's time for the Rose Chat Podcast, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the world's most beloved flower, the rose. Join award-winning gardeners Chris VanCleave and Teresa Byington as they chat with rose lovers and experts from around the globe. With each episode, you'll gain valuable knowledge and insights to achieve the rose garden you've always dreamed of. Listen now as we explore the world of roses.
Hello, rose friends. Today we have a special guest that I know will inspire us as she takes us into the beautiful world of Menagerie Farm and Flower. Felicia Alvarez started Menagerie in 2014 and strives to grow products that will help us make everyday life more beautiful. Don't you just love that? Today we're going to have fun just getting to know her better and her world. A world that is filled to the brim with roses, just the way we like it. Hey, Felicia, welcome to Rose Chat.
Hey, Teresa, I'm so happy to be here and connect with you. Really excited to talk to you today.
Oh, Felicia, I'm thrilled about this. You're a busy girl. I'm so glad.
Yeah, there's never a dull moment on the farm, that's for sure.
Well, you are busy, but you bring us all into it with your social media. And so it's so fun just to follow you there and see what's happening and know that all these wonderful things are happening at the farm. But my first big question is, when you were studying crop science and agriculture business in college, did you already know you were going to be a flower farmer?
No, not at all, actually. I fell into flower farming. When I was studying in college, I was focused more on viticulture and pomology, which is, study of wine grapes and basically fruit trees. Mm-hmm. And I had focused a lot on that. I grew up on the farm that I actually still farm on now, which includes the roses, farming French prunes. So I thought, I want to do something kind of similar to that. And I spent several years, actually almost a decade in the wine industry. And wine and viticulture, and I ended up sort of falling into roses in 2014. I had done a few, studied a little bit actually when I was in college, visiting a lot of the greenhouses around the central coast of California, where a lot of the greenhouse rose growers used to grow. I say used to because there's so many of them that are no longer in business anymore. And so I knew a little bit about the flower industry, a lot of it on the central coast, but I never thought I could do cut flowers like I do in an area where I grow now. So it really was a kind of a labor of love, but I did not know when I was studying in college that I was going to end up in floriculture. It was definitely not a direct path, but I'm really happy I found my way here. But all agriculture always has something that kind of ties it together, and roses are perennials, just like everything that I studied in college, and also just worked in for a decade or more. So I'm happy that I ended up in the rose world now. It's a great place to be.
Well, that made me think of our good friend Paul Zimmerman, who has worked hard to try to demystify growing roses. And he says, just think of this. Roses are just blooming shrubs.
Yeah, they are. I mean, he's right. He's absolutely right. And that's kind of similar message to me. I'm like, it's just like any tree or anything else. And I always say this, that it is a joke that I am a farmer, but I'm a horrible seed starter. I'm not good at annuals. I'm the person that will leave them in the greenhouse and they were, a week later they'll be dead because I didn't water them. I am much better at perennials, which is why I think I've always gravitated towards tree crops, perennial crops, roses. They're just, I enjoy them and I'm much better at growing them. So I think they found me probably.
Well, that's just great. We all have our areas of expertise. I do love my roses, and I've got a lot of them, but I do love to start a seed. There's something about that seed exploding that just gets to me. So, but I have really long, dark winters. You don't.
No, we don't really have, I joke it's never winter in California, even in Northern California, where I get a little bit more seasons than, Southern California and parts of the coast, coastal California. But yeah, we have a pretty temperate climate here. So it's pretty warm year round. There's always something sprouting, which is actually fun too. Sometimes I wish, oh gosh, I had more downtime, but it's always nice to have something growing, which is one of the benefits of our location.
One of my favorite stories about the difference in climate in the U.S. is that I was going to speak to a group in New Orleans, to my good friend Peggy Martin's group, and she had seen pictures of my rugosa roses, and she said, this was like February 10th, and she said, oh, bring me some cuttings of your rugosas. And so we trekked out with our boots and took pictures of our rugosas that had no leaves, were black stems, and probably 2 to 5 inches of snow at their base. I said, it's different here in February.
Yeah,
Peggy.
you're like, it's not the same. Our weather's a little different.
You'll get a box from me in June.
But that's the great thing about roses is they do grow in so many climates so well, and it's just about finding the seasons and knowing your climate. But they are a great plant to grow really anywhere. Like
yes.
they're fantastic.
There's something for everyone for sure in the rose world. Now I want to hear just a little bit about the farm. Tell us, its size, your location. We know you're in California where roses are just happy.
Yes, they do like it here. So I have the rose portion of my farm. Roses are only a part of kind of our farming or my farming portfolio. I have about 100 acres, and I grow rice and French prunes. I have roses. I also have now the nursery. The nursery part of the business has become a huge portion of the business. I also grow roses for cut flowers for the wedding and event industry. And we are located in a little town called Live Oak, which is about an hour north of Sacramento. So we're in the Sacramento Valley, where we do have, as I mentioned, a little more seasonal weather. We have cooler winters and warm, hot summers. We have some days that are below 32, but for the most part, we don't really get below freezing very much. It does not snow here, but we do have very warm summers. July and August, we can get up to over 100 degrees. And actually this week, as we are recording this, we're having a little heat wave here in June, and it's been over 100 degrees, which is unseasonably warm for us, but the roses do love it here. We have cooler nights, warm days, long sunlight hours, so it's a great location to be able to grow nursery plants as well as cut flowers.
Well, friends, if you don't already follow her on Instagram, please go and do that right now today, because she has such a beautiful way of keeping us all tucked into this beautiful place and what she's doing. And she has Friday tours, Q&As on Fridays. I mean, really, Felicia, you've created an online presence that I think is rare. It is dreamy, but it's also real. And those of us who are following, we feel like we're a part of it. Last spring, when you were going through all those rains and flooding, I was there.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, I try to be, I don't have like a social media team or, any of those things. It's really just me and my small team here on the farm. And I try to make it as realistic as possible. While selling the glamour or the sizzle's nice, everybody loves a beautiful bouquet shot. I think that showing, some of the challenges like weather, Mother Nature, all those things is also important. So that especially, I'm a professional farmer. That's what I do by trade. And even I struggle. And I think it's nice for home gardeners to especially see that too. I get a lot of people, especially in those Friday Q&As that I do, that are like, my roses have insects. I'm like, so do mine. Like I'm not like, some perfect rose grower. So that I like to do the tours and kind of give people a little peek behind so they can see what I do. I also like to tell them you don't need to do what I do, because your home gardeners are handle things a little bit different, and they should, than people who grow on a larger scale. Some of the cultural practices and things are different. So I like to sometimes show that compare and contrast. So I'm glad you enjoy our social media presence. It's fun to be able to share a little slice of where we are with everyone out there in the world.
Well, the most recent one that I've seen on your Friday tour, one of the things that was a highlight to me was you showed off Sweet Mademoiselle, and that's one of the ones that I got from you this spring. She's
great.
budded up, and I can't wait to see her bloom. But when I saw those big old blooms on your Sweet Mademoiselle, I was excited.
Yes, that one has a pretty high petal count, huge blooms, long stems, very long stems. So for people that are cut flower fans that like that traditional long stem rose, that hybrid tea kind of is checks all those boxes. I also really like the coloration on the blooms. That one has
Mm-hmm.
kind of a almost an ombre sort of hue as it ages to the petals that I think is really beautiful. Great fragrance too. It's a really nice rose, really dark foliage as well. So for people that like that kind of dark green, I think it's a great, really disease resistant. Now that I'm talking about now I'm thinking about it, it kind of checks all the boxes. It is a really great rose. I think you're going to love it. I hope you love it.
Well, it's looking great. I saw yours. I'm ready. I'm ready. She's, it's a little bit early for her, something planted this year for us, but she's going to be great. Now, one other thing I want to talk about while we're talking about the farm at large, before we get into all the rose things, but you have an academy that I'd like for our friends to hear about.
Yeah, I do have an online learning academy, and it's focused on roses, like rose education, and for my burgeoning flower farming friends. Or a lot of times people will start in their backyards and turn into flower farmers, small flower farmers. It's just education on roses, how to grow them, what to do, post-harvest care, insect and disease control. It was an offshoot of my in-person workshop classes that we used to do prior to 2020, and we all know in 2020 everything kind of shut down, and I couldn't do my in-person workshops anymore. So I started doing things online. And then it just sort of spiraled from there, that now I have this wonderful academy where I have a monthly membership fee people can pay and join us. And I have educational videos, and I have a couple different levels for people that really want to go in depth with their roses, or kind of get a little bit more hand holding from me. We have a few different levels you can join at that have different sort of perks of the membership. But the main thing is really trying to help people grow the best roses they can, provide them with a community of other rose lovers. And I think for me, it's also just, there's a lot, the internet's a big place, and there's a lot of information out there on roses. And some of it, I end up usually kind of getting people just like they would if they went into a doctor's office and they were like, oh, here, I found all this stuff on Dr. Google, and they're trying like everything under the sun. And I kind of have to go, hey, let's go back and try, maybe something a little simpler. So I really try to help people grow the best roses they can. And I think one of the other things that's been most rewarding for me is I've got to know more people all across the country that grow in different climates, their struggles, and also be able to help them fit roses into their lives. This is one of the things that I was really, when I was writing my book, that I was really passionate about, is that not everyone has time to go out into their garden every day and scout for bugs and insects and things. And so what I do with people in the academy is a lot of times I'm coaching people with how much time do you really have to spend? And then we try to pick roses that will really kind of fit their lifestyle of gardening. And I think that's been really rewarding for me too, is being able to help people design roses, or rose gardens, I should say, around their needs and interests, as well as helping a lot of flower farmers that are new to farming, and they want to grow roses, and they want to be able to sell them as cut flowers. As the rose industry, especially for cut flowers, continues to decrease because of the pressure of cut flower imports coming from South America, I am really passionate about giving education to new and beginning farmers, so that we can continue to have some domestically grown roses in the cut flower marketplace. So that's all kind of part of the academy as well. So one of the key words that you said, excuse me, I'm jumping right in, but one of the key words you said was community. It's been my experience that a lot of gardeners are introverts. And so on a small scale, getting them together, it's wonderful. And feeling a part of a smaller community, it doesn't seem so vast. And, Google, we have it, but wow, it's impersonal and it's vast and it's often wrong. And or sometimes I might say it's not wrong. It's just not working for you. The care for gardens or roses is not one size fits all. So, it's about finding that, finding some advice that'll help you, and really, again, provide that community for learning. And, it's been really, really great to be able to extend into that education into the online world that I used to just do, here in person. Which we still do as well. We still do a few workshops, at the farm every year too, as well.
And all of that information, friends, is on the website. So go to the website, and just allow yourself some time, because there's lots of beautiful things there you'll want to see and learn about. let's get into the roses. Did you already say how many you grow? Because I don't remember.
I don't know. I don't think I did.
No, I don't
I
think you
don't
did
think I
either.
did. I know we were
Well,
talking
how many
before
do
we
you
started
grow?
recording, but I have about 4,000 that I grow for cut flowers. And then that doesn't include what I have for nursery production as well, which is quite a lot too. But there's about 4,000 in the ground that are for cut flower production. I always say, oh, I'm not going to expand anymore. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of rose growers in the U.S. That grow for cut flowers are slowly leaving us. They are going out of business, or they're closing their doors for different reasons. And so there's always room for more roses in the marketplace. So I feel like I always say I'm not going to expand more, and somehow I do. There's always a new color, or a new something, or a new customer that a new client that needs something. So yeah, it's I think it's a good size, and compared to it takes up less than 3 acres of what I farm, and so to me it's such a small footprint compared to the other 100 acres I have of other crops. So that's what I think people are always most amazed by when they come and physically visit the farm and they see the part that's roses and the parts that's all the other things, all the other trees, and they're like, "Wow, it's not very big." I'm like, "I know, we pack it in. It's a very high density production for our cut flowers on our roses."
Very efficient use
Yes,
of your space. Very efficient.
Yes.
Well, you're saying that, you're not going to add any more. And of course, any of us who have been growing roses for a long time, we keep saying our gardens are, we got to cap it. But, I have these long Indiana winters, and they afford me plenty of time to start researching and looking. And then I just start obsessing about what I want for my garden. So you just have to find either room for more or do what I did this year. I gave a lot away of things that I loved for things I wanted to try. So
yes, that is usually what happens in production is we will cycle out either poor performers or ones that are just no longer in fashion. Like it's usually color that people, like it was popular and now it's not as much, and we'll just replant with something new. So which is fun. Like it's trends come and go. So it's interesting to see, what's going to be popular in 5 years isn't necessarily what's popular now in terms of cut flower industry, which shares some of the production or some trends with the garden industry, but they're not always synonymous.
Well, I'm curious about what trends you are seeing. I know that it seems like Coco Loco and Distant Drums, those muted tones have been the color palette for a while. Is that still what you're seeing?
Yeah, the antique tones are still very popular, but peach has been really making I would say a run for it. Like they've been kind of neck and neck with those antique tones, like anything in the peach family in terms of cut flowers production. Also just classic whites and creams, because a lot of what I grow for cut flowers goes to weddings and events, and a classic white wedding, someone's always having a classic white wedding. So I would say whites and creams are always very popular. Peaches and the antique tones, they might have a couple more years left. I said that I think a couple years ago, and I'm surprised they've held on as long as they have. But yeah, they still are best selling. They really are. Like they continue to be the most popular for cut flowers by far.
Well, my obsession last winter was the creamy ones. I ended up buying Top Cream, Cream Veranda, Bolero, all of the
whites and creams.
Yes.
There's a lot of really good ones now. Top Cream is a great one. So it's a really great one. Easy Spirit was one. That was a week spread one from a couple years ago. That's great as well. It's a white and cream. Yeah. So there's a lot of really good whites and creams out there, and they're always very popular for weddings.
So that's probably answers my next questions. How do you make the decision on what roses to grow and sell? So you're sort of following the trends and seeing what's popular.
Yeah, we do. I mean, for our cut flowers is a little different than our nursery. It's, it's kind of essentially two different divisions of the business, because, what sells well in plants doesn't necessarily isn't the same as what sells well for cut flowers. So I kind of handle them both differently, though. A lot of it is really driven by demand and customer demand. I always joke. I was doing actually a tour for one of my workshops here a couple months ago, and I just kind of offhand, kind of flippantly said, I was like, I should make a whole section on my website that's roses Felicia loves, but nobody buys. And because there's tons that I love that like are slow sellers. And I'm looking at the numbers going like, I don't think I can, grow this one next year because it just doesn't move. And just because I love it, like, I'm like, oh, it's so great. And usually, and that's the irony of, when people come to the workshops and they see the rose in person, they're like, what's this one? I'm like, oh, I love that one. And because it's, kind of better in person than on paper kind of thing. Yeah. Like, yes, I love that one, but no one buys that one. So I do really base a lot on, what our sales numbers are, like what are people buying? Mm-hmm. I mean, and ultimately, like I am in business, and I kind of sometimes have to separate that from the roses I personally love. But and as far as garden roses, it's kind of the same thing. What are in garden trends? Like I look a lot at the fashion industry and seeing like what's popular on runways and things in terms of colors and stuff. Mm-hmm. And that usually trickles its way into especially wedding and event design. And then once it goes into wedding and event design, it becomes, popular in wedding event kind of interiors. Then eventually within a year or two, it kind of trickles into landscape design. So I found that that's kind of the pathway. So as long as I'm, really paying attention to what's going on with fashion and home design, that usually kind of will predicate, what landscape design ends up looking like. Mm-hmm. Kind of those, just kind of like, how kitchens for a long time, everybody was doing kind of white subway tile, white, very neutral kitchens like that. That's been extremely popular for several years. And now, you're seeing more colorful kitchens. Mm-hmm. With more brighter colors or even, blues and greens. That's going to translate into, the front of houses and gardens kind of being the same, not as much as just kind of that neutral, boxwood hedge kind of neutral color palette. I see more people now wanting to landscape with brighter colors, especially roses. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of how I choose. I mean, ultimately, it really is what sells, which is not a great answer, but it's the truth. Yeah. And then I have my section that's roses everybody or Felicia loves, but nobody buys. Very and it works itself out. And eventually, I probably won't sell them, but I just there's those ones that have the special place in your heart for whatever reason, and I continue to bring them back.
Very true. My two probably all-time favorites. Are Mother of Pearl and Quietness. I don't think you carry Quietness. I would love to see what Quietness does in California. I don't think anyone out there that I know of is growing it, but it is an outstanding rose for me. It's another Dr. Buck rose, and it's just it's pink. It's a light pink, so but I think it's probably light enough for wedding work. But it's a fantastic rose. And Mother of Pearl, she does
well everywhere.
Great.
Yeah, she's great. She's almost iridescent. Like I always say that she always just shines wherever she's planted. Just the hint and the tone on her petals is just amazing.
And she can be more pink, and she can certainly be more peach. And one of the things I love best about her is she holds onto her petals, so she can be not fantastic, but beautiful from the window.
Yes, exactly. She looks good, which is what a good landscape rose is. Yes. Like I always tell people that too when they're like worried about every little speckle or insect bite. Or I was like, most people are not going up to your roses with a microscope and like looking like if they're driving by your house or they're just sitting in your yard, like they look nice. Like that's the point. So not to worry about every little speckle, but the ones that hold their petals, that's great because they make a beautiful display in the landscape.
Mm-hmm. I learned many years ago from another friend, Beverly Rose Hopper. She said, prune for maximum bloom. That means don't take everything off, let it age on there. So and I started doing that years ago, and it does work. We don't have to take every little, petal that's getting ready to go off. We need to let them age because, boy, from a distance, they still look great.
Yeah, they look beautiful. That's actually, you talk about trends. That's actually becoming more of a trend I found with some of my wedding design clients that, in the flower world, when you harvest, it's like, you're always harvesting for a maximum base life. So it's, nice tight buds, sepals down, like you want them to last the longest by the time the customer gets them or gets that cut flower. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you you really do miss out and lose out on a lot of the beautiful colors and tones that happen naturally when the rose ages on the plant, when you cut at that stage for sale. So I have several clients now that realize that, it's not going to last as long if I cut it later, but they want them cut when they're open and they've aged on the plant a little bit, and they want me to harvest them then. That way it gives them a little bit more depth and a little bit more of that more natural look in their floral designs, which I think is great, because it is that's trade-off of, it's, you may not get a week or even 5 or 10 days, in the vase, but for that, that wedding event that's, 1 to 2 days, like, they look absolutely gorgeous. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that is kind of becoming a bit of a trend too, is aging on the plant and using that
I
for
love
floral
that.
design.
I just, it works here in my garden. I'm loving that, because, we have a big window in our kitchen and we can enjoy it. But if you were just walking by, it would say, oh, maybe you need to pick that off. But no, just leave it. Just enjoy it there.
Yes.
Now you're seeing so many. So are there any out there that are bobbing their heads up and just being outstanding this year?
Outstanding. Oh goodness. Roses that are outstanding. Gosh, so I get like, that's kind of my hard part too, is I love so many. Like, some I'm like, oh, those are great ones in the spring, or those look great in the middle of summer, or some like tend to shine a little more in fall. But I always love, I mean, I always say this, you and I were talking about even before we started recording, I always love yellows. Like, I think they look great in landscape because they're just so bright and colorful. So those ones always usually stand out to me. I like Moonlight Romantica and Roald Dahl and Golden Celebration. Those are always look really good in my area. They can stand up to the heat, which is a huge thing for me in the summer. Teasing Georgia, I have that one climbing actually in our nursery, our potted rose nursery. That one's climbing and it looks gorgeous. So I would say those are some of the standouts for me right now. That I was out there actually yesterday quite a lot, making sure, checking on everything. And those were all looking good or looking nice this time of year.
Well, I've had a pale palette for many, many, many years. Mine's a cottage garden, but it's heavy on roses, and sort of a pale palette. But then I fell in love with Bathsheba, and then I fell in love with Crown Princess Margareta, and then Moonlight Romantica. So I'm getting a little.
You're getting a little color
yellow,
in there.
I'm getting a little yellow to the orange. So I'm loving it.
You could do. Do you have Imogen? Or Chantilly Cream? Those are like lighter yellows that would kind of go with your pale.
Chantilly Cream is just now, I bought it this year. She's just now blooming for me. She was all part of the cream. You had to have cream in your name or be white last winter. Yeah. So she was one. She was top cream Veranda, Bolero, and Chantilly Cream. So she is not creamy, but she is. She's more butter creamy.
She's more,
she is blooming these huge blooms. I'm just seeing the first ones.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but you'll have to let me know how she does the rest of the season for you. But I think she's probably will look good with all those other, just describing your color palette. I bet she'd be extremely complimentary to all those other colors.
And they're especially good. We get hot here too, and we get dry. And so come along August, though, when we start getting into what's going to be our last flush, those really do just pop, and they just do, take us into the fall very well.
Well, good. I can imagine, because you get those. When is your last kind of frost date, or when do you kind of say goodbye for your season? What time of year?
Well, we stop fertilizing 1st of September. We're going to have, it's typically been October 10th is the date they give us, but it's more like October 15th. But we might get a bad one night, and it kind of changes things, but then we're pretty warm. Really, it's been up to January almost. I mean, we don't get the intense cold that we did, but there's always a few nights and it's going to drip so screaming low that the roses just balk. So we still get a lot of dieback, but it's not used to. It was a lot of nights like that, but it has changed a bit. And so we aren't getting super, super cold very often, but it's enough to aggravate the roses for sure.
Oh, well, at least sounds like you still have a pretty long growing season then.
Yeah.
You got roses through October. That's great.
My goal has always been, I'm always jealous of my friends who have roses on the Thanksgiving table. And 2 years ago, we almost got there
Oh,
not.
yes, it is. That is true. That's why I always my mark for here in California is Christmas. Like I always want something for Christmas, and then after that, I'm like, okay, hack them down because we have to get our
Yeah.
pruning in time before everything starts blooming, or if we have an early spring, like we'll have hot weather by February. But that's kind of my like. I'm like, even if we start pruning the field, like I always try to leave my house roses or my landscape roses around our house
Mhm.
through to Christmas. Like I always
Yeah.
like to have those December roses,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah, after Christmas, to me, it's spring. After
Yeah.
Christmas, my mind is spring. I start counting down the days. It doesn't matter how much it snows in January. I'm starting the seeds. I'm thinking of dahlias. I'm thinking of roses that I'm going to buy. So I just, Christmas is my defining line.
Yeah, that's why I kind of the same. I'm like, okay, new season starts. Like Christmas is my end date. We put roses on the table, and then we really do go out and start pruning. Literally, like sometimes even Christmas Day, I'll take my kids out there. I'm like, all right, we're gonna start pruning while the food's
Mhm.
cooking, or like we're gonna start hacking these down. So
Mhm.
we can get it done in time before our warmer weather comes.
Yes, it's going to come soon for you. Now, you sell both bare roots and potted roses, but you only ship the bare roots, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Our potted roses, we sell 5-gallon potted roses. So they're not the 2-quart. They're
Mhm.
big, kind of beefier, heavier roses. And I've just found over the years, we did try to sell some, or we did, I should say, a few years ago, during the COVID year, we tried to start shipping the potted roses, and we just found that the cost of shipping was a bit cost prohibitive for a lot of customers.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we like people to have a good customer or a good experience with us. And then we can only ship certain times a year because of the heat. And we just found that it just wasn't, it just wasn't as productive for us. So we just stick to shipping our bare roses. It doesn't mean in the future, we may not start shipping, some of our
Mhm.
pots here and there, but for now it's just pick up at the nursery only. For
I love the
our
bare root
potted roses.
season. For us, it gets us into the garden a little early, and I love that. I love that we can get them, and it is just also that whole miracle. You see this gnarly little root, and then you see what it does in the summer. That's just a fun process. But I know a few people have asked me, "Oh, can we really go out and plant these bare roots in March?" And I said, "Yes, we're just going to let them wake up with the rest of the roses."
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I think it's easy too. I think people see it and it's like scary. Like, I think they have this idea that like, it looks, or we get a lot of, beginning rose growers that contact us by email or, social media, whatever. I get lots of questions I've fielded for many years. And usually the number one question from like beginning growers or people that have never grown a rose before, or maybe they've bought a house and there's existing roses, but they've never planted one on their own, is they think they're dead. They're like, but it's dead. I'm like, it's not dead. It's just dormant. It's just sleeping. I promise it's going to wake up and it's going to look beautiful, and it just water it and do a little pruning. Like it's a pretty easy plant to grow.
Well, it's so true. And even if I buy too early in the season to put in the garden a plant that's blooming or budding up, I will cut all of those off because there again, I want it to just wait and open when the rest of the garden is opening.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to do, but I do, and I'm always glad that I do. But I bought I got 2 Eustacia vines. One I bought as a potted plant through our Rose Society, and one I got as a bare root. So I trimmed the one I got back so they could bloom together
at the same time.
And they did, and they're gorgeous, and they're so
great.
gorgeous. I'm so glad I did that because they're in a great spot where they're going to work together. But anyway. But your bare roots might not look really pretty, but you packaged them so pretty. That box was so beautiful and so fun to get. And those gummy bears just took me over the edge.
Oh, well, I'm glad you enjoyed your unboxing experience. Yes, we do take plant quality very seriously here. I do. I always say I'm not going to send out a plant that I wouldn't put in my own field. Mm-hmm. We like to leave nice long roots so people can choose whether they want to trim them off and put them in a pot or what they want to do. But that they are bare roots, and we like to make sure that the root structure is really nice. Not that the canes aren't good, but when you're selling bare roots, as most rose growers or experienced rose growers know that it's the root structure that's really important at that point. And once you plant it, you will get your new basal breaks and your new canes, and you can, shape at that point the top part of the plant. So we really want to make sure that we send off healthy, long roots. So I'm glad you enjoyed yours.
Yes, they looked great. The box was beautiful, just a nice experience. So well done on that. So let's go into some tips. Now, you live in California where roses are usually very happy, but I'm sure there's pests that you deal with and you hear about. So what are some of your top tips for growing roses and some of your pest experience?
So I would say maybe some of my top tips are what I've found over the years. And I take a lot of, because there's not as much research on garden roses. The industry doesn't spend as much research on some of the care tips as other crops that I grow. So I sometimes take some of the research done in some of the other perennials and tree crops that I grow, and I kind of say, hey, can I apply some of this, or how does this apply to roses? Like thinning of canopies for light refraction, or the one tip I have usually is people tend to underwater. And I know it sounds crazy because, everywhere you go on the internet, again, one of those tips people always say is they don't like wet feet, which is true. They don't want to be in like a soggy marsh. But most people do not put enough water on their roses into the root zones. Mm-hmm. So meaning they're not running their drip irrigation, long enough, or it's not getting into that root zone, and they're not keeping a consistent moisture over a period of days during the week. Like maybe they have their irrigation on and it's set to water like twice a week. And so for 2 days, it's nice and moist. And then the other 3 days, it kind of goes into basically a state of shock, because it's like, hey, we don't have enough water, and then it starts to conserve, and then it gets like flush with water again. So I would say inconsistency in watering, like if people can dial in their watering regimen, usually a lot of the pest and disease issues will go away, or at least be diminished. I find a lot when I do my consulting, it's watering. And I think it's because it's the most confusing thing for people, because it does, you can't just say to, like, I can't tell you, oh, water twice a week, because I don't know your soil type. I don't know, what your irrigation system is, how much pressure it has, how many gallons per hour it puts out. Like it's you really have to give advice on a one-on-one basis to everybody's individual yards, that I think it's why it's so confusing for people, and that most people end up underwatering. So that would be my tip, is like, check your watering regimen and make sure you're watering enough. Most people don't water enough.
And deep watering just is the ticket,
Yes, into that root zone. That's what I'm saying, into the root zone. Most people water, and it's especially if they got clay soil, they're like, oh, well, my water's been on for an hour, but it's not getting into the root zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In those periods of drought, we want those roots to be way down there where they're not as affected by what's going on with the sun.
Yeah. So that would probably be my top tip, would be just check your watering regimen, look at your moisture, and make sure that they're getting enough water.
I think one of the things I've noticed this year, that I have some really healthy stems on my roses, more than usual. And I've fertilized, but nothing, no heroics. Mm-hmm. But we've had so much rain that, our grass is pretty much a bog. But the roses never complain about too much rain. They just don't. But the rest of the plants are saying, my lilacs are going, no way, this is too much, the grass. But the roses, they're just sending up these huge pains.
I know. You mentioned even, our Instagram, like following along with my couple of years of, too much water, or what happens when we have floods here in California, that I have had portions of our production field for our cut flowers that were, that we couldn't get the water out, even with pumps and stuff. Not this year. This year ended up being okay. It was 2 years ago where we had the extremely wet winter. And, I had roses that were under, 12 inches of water for multiple weeks. They were fine, happy as clams by the time summer came. So they didn't die. People are always worried about that. I'm like, I can tell you. And I again, because I just don't think there's a lot of research on it. Like most researchers don't intentionally dump 12 inches of water on their roses and leave it there to see what's going to happen to them in 1 month. There's just not a lot of data out there on it. So a lot of, mine is really just experiencing growing in a production field. And I don't recommend that for most gardeners either. If you can usually drain your roses, but I will say that I have learned a lot about, I also just research, as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about irrigation, because I think it solves a lot of things. People fertilize less. Once you get that under control, a lot of the other problems go away. But I can tell you, I have had roses sitting under standing water for multiple weeks and they were fine. they end up doing fine. So I kind of laugh that I'm like, yeah, they don't like wet feet, but they kind of do. They're okay. They're okay. They come out okay. They
They
like
are
that.
thirsty.
They like that deep watering. So, or they like that water in the wintertime. So
They do.
yeah, they do.
So what are the biggest pests you deal with out there?
For me here on the farm, I would say that the ones that do the most damage are thrips. Especially for the cut flower production, because they just any little bite, and since a lot of them are in that microscopic size that they climb inside the petals, which makes pest and disease control really hard, especially if you're using a contact product to treat it, because you can't get spray in between the petals. They are my biggest pet, I would say, that's like truly damaging. I also deal with aphids, which I'll be honest, we don't even treat for, like, because they don't do much damage. They're pretty seasonal, and by the time they go through their life cycle, like, they haven't really done too much damage, and they're not a problem. We also get spider mites in the heat here.
Oh yeah.
They're kind of, I would say, a secondary pest for us. We don't get Japanese beetles or any of those things. I know that got
I'll send you some. No,
I know, which I would
won't.
say, I'm sure if I lived in an area where Japanese beetle were, that would probably be my number one. So knock on wood, we do not have Japanese beetle, but thrips really are our biggest problem in terms of pests of roses.
Do you have chili thrips or just regular
I don't
thrips?
here, but they are in California. But I've been lucky enough to be able to keep them away from my area, from my little slice of production. But there are chili thrips in California.
I was shocked at the damage that they did. My daughter lived for a few years in California, and of course had roses, and I'd never seen that kind of damage. It was, almost like I thought, well, this isn't rose rosette, but it really damages.
It like defoliates it almost, or I mean, it looks like it just it looks damaged.
I mean, even the tips looked deformed. It was just really, I'd never seen anything like that. I can see why it's just heartbreaking. Our Japanese beetles, they come and they go. They have their season, and it is ugly and nasty, but boy, those chili, I really feel for you guys having to deal with that.
Yeah. Ours are mostly just Western flower thrip, which is not as bad as the chili thrip, but still is not great for cut flower production.
Especially those creamy ones that we love.
Yes, the creamy ones are just, I know people always ask me, oh, what's your number one tip for people that are starting to, flower farmers, or they want to get into flower farming and they want to grow roses? I'm like, don't grow whites and creams. Start with the darker colors. Start with a yellow. That's why I'm like, start with a yellow or a peach, or, something that if it does have some insect damage, that it's not as noticeable. Or the ombre colors, you don't usually tend to see those things because it kind of blends in. It looks like it's just naturally part of the rose or the natural growth. But yeah, the whites and creams are just same in the summer when we get really hot on those super hot, which is rare, but we do have those 110, 115 degree days. Like, they just get scorched. Those whites and creams are just miserable in the heat.
Yeah, but we love them.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned your book, but I want to talk a little bit more about it because it just looks outstanding. I haven't ordered it yet, but I'm definitely, that it's going to be on my shelf. I just saw it, and it is absolutely beautiful. So in your spare time, you wrote a book. I mean, I just can't even believe that you had this time.
Yeah, that was a COVID bread, or that was again, it wasn't really spare time. It was the publishers approached me during like the summer of 2020 and just said like, hey, have you, ever thought about writing a book? I was like, no, I am just trying to get through the year. I've got my kids home. All weddings and events had been canceled, which was, hard for our business. I'm not going to lie, like to have, all of your wholesale production and all wedding, where all of our roses went, which is basically overnight, disappeared. And we had to pivot to, more retail, which was new for us, sending out bouquets. And anyhow, so I'll be honest, I was pretty reluctant because I was like, I don't know that I'm going to have time, to put into, writing a book, but I did realize that I did have a lot of basically what ended up going into the book, or the outline, like already done, kind of just through other things I had written. So it was just a matter of, filling in things in there and coming up with kind of a framework for the book. And so it ended up being a really good kind of, lockdown project for me.
Oh, I bet it was. And it is beautiful. Everything that you do, you just add so much beauty. And so it's just, you just ooze joy. And
thank you. That's so nice.
You bring that to everything that you do. And here's the title of the book. Guys, you're going to love this. Growing Wonder, A Flower Farmer's Guide to Roses. Now, is that perfect?
Oh, thank you. Yes, Growing Wonder has always been our tagline, and the book publishers liked it so much. They're like, "Can we use it?" Because it's a whole trademark and thing, because it's actually been our tagline, and can we use it for the book? And but yes, like our goal is to help you grow wonderful things, like wonderful gardens, wonderful roses. So.
Well, who doesn't want a rose book written by someone who confesses that roses are their love language? Love that.
Yes, I think there are, especially in the U.S. I know you have listeners, I'm sure, that are not U.S. only, but like it's our national flower. I mean, it's a beautiful flower.
Yes, I tell people all the time, you could mention zinnia, which is a great flower, and common, or you can remember nasturtium. And not everyone in the room is going to know what you're talking about, but everyone knows about roses, and they know that they're special.
Yes, and they know they have. I have a little section in the book too where I talk about that, like the memory of your rose memories, that people have them from childhood, like if it's your prom corsage or your grandmother's garden or your wedding bouquet. Everyone tends to have some rose memories, like even if they aren't rose growers. You are right that it is that flower that kind of transcends, that most people are like, oh yes, I have like you said, there's no nasturtium memory. Nobody's like, oh, I remember that nasturtium.
I know.
People always do remember, have some sort of, usually a memory of roses from their first suitor, or so. Yeah, it's a beautiful flower to fall in love with.
I think Ronald Reagan was president when I was just looking at some of my notes that I had on my blog about the rose becoming the national floral emblem, and it said. There was a quote in there that I really liked. I'm going to botch it here, but it was something about, with the rose, it speaks the language of the heart. So when you speak of the language of the heart, you do so with the rose, or something like that. And I thought, that is so
that's
true.
Very sweet. It's true. Yes, it is.
So true. So true. So the book looks absolutely fabulous. And friends, you can find that on the website too. There's so many wonderful things for you to see on that website. It's menagerieflower.com. Did I get that right?
You did. Yep. Just menagerieflower.com.
Yes. Okay, we have just covered a lot of things, but I can't let you go until we talk about the Sunday stem.
Oh,
Tell our listeners about the Sunday stem.
Oh, goodness. So Sunday stem is just a little social media video or that I do with my kids. And I do actually, if you like Instagram, if you're an Instagrammer, you can go into my save stories under Sunday stem, and I go into a little more of the history of how it started. But I'm going to try to make a long story short here for you. But prior to 2020, I used to go out every day and I would do what was called a stem of the day, and I would put it up on social media. I would go out to the field and find like one really cool looking, long, beautiful stem, and I would share about it on Instagram. And then 2020 came, and my kids ended up, home for quite some time, like most everyone, when we were all during lockdowns. And they were just, like every parent, I was like, what, my kids had to come to work with me, and we were just making do. And so my kids started doing stem of the day. They started helping me with it, especially my older one, Joseph. Started helping me with it, and he would just say, this is the stem of the day, and he would just do what I did. And then we did that for a while in 2020, 21, and then I got out of the habit of it. We weren't cutting as many flowers because wedding and events were canceled and whatnot, and we just I stopped doing stem of the day. It just sort of, it wasn't a conscious decision of, oh hey, I'm going to stop sharing roses, but I just stopped sharing them on social media. So last summer, it was kind of the end of the summer, and my son was just out with me, and he's like, Mom, what if we did stem of the day like we did when I used to be home with you? I'm like, well, that's a good idea. So we did a couple, and we put them on social media, and people love them. They're like, oh my gosh. And they remembered. They're like, we remembered when he used to do this, because I think a lot of people were stuck in their homes and they were on social media a lot, and they remembered all of our stories from those times. They're like, I can't believe he's so grown up, and I remember when he used to do it. So he just actually, it wasn't even my idea. It was his idea. He said, Mom, we come out here every Sunday and we cut something for our house. It's kind of our little family tradition. I just had never shared it, with our online community. It's kind of our little family thing. We go out in the morning, we take care of our family garden where my kids have their vegetables and fruits and their zinnias and their dahlias, and, separate from kind of the business of our farm. And we do that every Sunday. And he said, would it be fun if we showed everybody what we cut for our house? And I said, yeah, that would be great. So at the end of last summer, we started that, and it kind of changed from, stem of the day to Sunday STEM, because we do it every Sunday. And that's kind of the rest is history, as they say. Now I put it online every week. I used to do piece stories, but now I'm turning it in, and I'm trying to become more modern. I do a reel now, which is I am an analog person in a online world, and I try to keep up with all the trends, but I am just that generation slightly older. I did not grow up with smartphones and all of that, so I try my best to keep up with that stuff. So now we have a reel, not every Sunday, but as often as we can, and when my kids are in the mood to do it, and we do the Sunday STEM, and we share something that is blooming beautifully on the farm. Usually it's roses most of the season, because that's what we have out here, but we also share tulips, and we have our pre-chilled tulips and other things as well. So if you want to, you can go on my Instagram and see some of my kids sharing our flowers that we pick every Sunday.
Well, I have to tell you this story. We have 4 little grandboys, and so we see these 2 little boys, and they're doing the Sunday STEM. It was so cute. So I had to show it to my husband. So he loved them. He thought they were so cute. That's our heart, these little boys. And so then, probably a month later, I was thrifting, and I bought a little vase. And when I came in and showed it to my husband, he said, "Oh, this will be good for our Sunday STEM."
Oh, good. See, it's a movement. And that's so, what, that makes me so happy to hear, because that's my son, Joseph, my oldest one. He is really a people person. And he doesn't have social media, or he doesn't have his own accounts or anything like that. Like that's off limits for the age he is, but he likes to talk and share with people. Like, that's why he loves the weekends, because he's home from school and people come out to the nursery and he can talk to them about flowers. And so this is kind of his version of that. Like, he wants to hear about people's flowers. Like, he wants them to go do their own Sunday stems. So he'll love that when I tell him that. Like, I heard somebody else, I go, I haven't heard someone else that's doing Sunday STEM. He's hoping to inspire people to go out and, just snip something small. It doesn't have to be a big production, and just, put it on your table, put it on your kitchen table, put it on your windowsill. Like, it does make you happier. I think a lot of times people, maybe don't enjoy their gardens enough. It becomes too much of a chore, and they're worried about insects and pests and diseases, and don't stop to, really enjoy that beauty that's out there. And just taking that 5 minutes every week on Sunday to pick a stem, I think is a good practice. And I think he had a good idea there. He's my sweet. Well, they're both sweeties, but he's the one that likes to share flowers. Like, that's his thing. So
so sweet, so sweet. We're so excited about our Sunday STEM each week. So tell him he has definitely inspired us.
I will.
He definitely. Well, Felicia, we have covered so much territory today. This has been fantastic.
Well, it was so great to talk to you today. I'm so happy that I finally got to do the podcast. Like, this is a thrill for me. So thank you very much.
Well, it's definitely a thrill for me. I know you're busy, and thank you for joining me today and taking your time. And just thank you for bringing so much beauty to our world. I certainly appreciate all that you do.
Thanks, Teresa.
Well, friends, if you don't already follow Felicia on social media, go today and check her out. Check out the website for even more inspiration, and you can take a look at the roses. They're just dreamy. So go take a look at the roses and see the book. And, well, for most of us, it's full on rose season. So until next time, have fun in your garden and be sure to pick a Sunday stem.
You've been listening to the Rose Chat podcast with Chris VanCleave and Teresa Byington, expert rose gardeners who want to help you achieve the rose garden of your dreams. Don't miss an episode. Listen anytime on our website at rosechatpodcast.com, or listen on the go via the Rose Chat app on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Share this podcast with your social networks and join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by using the hashtag RoseChat. Join us next time for another edition of the Rose Chat podcast. The Rose Chat podcast is a production of the Rose Chat Media Group, Birmingham, Alabama.